Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. As Russia-Ukraine peace talks gains momentum, U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner are headed to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Russian forces have claimed that they have captured the eastern Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, which is a key logistics hub. However, Kyiv has not confirmed the Russian claims yet. White House defends U.S. attack on boat from Venezuela is lawful, as White House defends a U.S. admiral's decision to conduct multiple strikes on an alleged Venezuelan drug smuggling vessel starting from September, saying he had Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's authorization. A diplomatic clash between China and Japan over recent remarks by Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi is heating up at the United Nations. Chinese Ambassador Fu Kong has sent a second letter to Secretary General Antonio Guterres while urging Tokyo to retract the earlier remarks. White House defends U.S. attack on boat from Venezuela as lawful, as White House defends a U.S. admiral's decision to conduct multiple strikes on an alleged Venezuelan drug smuggling vessel starting from September. He has said that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's authorization. Former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has been released from a U.S. prison where he was serving a 45-year sentence for drug trafficking and firearms offenses after receiving a presidential pardon from U.S. President Donald Trump. The European Central Bank has refused to backstop a $163 billion loan to Ukraine, with officials criticizing that the EU's plans to use frozen Russian assets would violate the bank's mandate. Taiwan's opposition blocks $40 billion defense budget, prompting protests from ruling DPP, KMT and TPP say William Lai's government is seeking a blank check and demand details of procurement plans before proposal can be reviewed. Now for this hour, we start with Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is calling for a complete end to the war with Russia, not just a pause in fighting. Speaking alongside Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin, Zelenskyy has said that Ukraine needs a dignified peace and warned that no deals should be made behind Ukraine's back. He has said that he's ready to meet U.S. President Donald Trump, but stressed that everything now depends on the outcome of the talks underway in Moscow. Zelenskyy added that he expects direct communication from the U.S. team immediately after their meeting with Russian officials. He has also said that there will be no easy decisions to end the war, but believes the chances for peace are better now than ever. He has repeated his call for frozen Russian assets to be used for Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. Separately, a senior Kyiv official said that the Ukrainian delegation may meet U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner as early as tomorrow, possibly in Brussels, though no final agreement has been reached. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. John Rosomondo. He's the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical expert, joins us live from Washington. Thank you very much, John, for joining us again. Good to see you. John, now looking at this, how do you analyze the current situation? Do you think we are closer to peace between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I think that I'll say what I've said previously on this channel, that I don't see peace any closer because the Russians are not going to give up on their desire for all of the territory in the Donbass that would require the Ukrainians to give up the territory that they've managed to hold on to despite over 10 years of war. The Russians, on the other hand, will not give up because they believe that if they were to show any sort of weakness, it would be a sign to their people that they've lost, and they don't want to give that sign.
Right. And John, how might this situation in Pokrovsk and, ongoing territorial disputes, how do you think this is influencing Ukraine's negotiating position in Moscow-led peace talks?
Well, I mean, the Russians have been able to gain slight territorial advances at the expense of Ukraine. I think that, Ukraine is in a difficult situation, and that, if it wants to have, peace for the moment, it's going to have to make some painful concessions.
Yes, and but if it does cede, supposedly it does cede territory, how do you think it will affect the future of Ukraine and Russia's relationship?
Well, I think the one thing is that the Russians have shown, like through their malfeasance in the Budapest agreement back in '94, which guaranteed the territorial integrity of Ukraine as was in 1991, to its handling of the Minsk Accords. So the Russians, have been shown to have no trustworthiness.
And how do you think, how could this Ukrainian pushing, use of Russian assets, do you think this is realistically possible?
Well, I think that the Ukrainians probably will be able to get the Europeans to give it access to some of these assets to continue the war. But I think that right now we're in the middle of a stalemate. I think that neither side is willing to really give. I mean, Zelenskyy wants the war to end, but the one person who could end the war tomorrow, Vladimir Putin, has no interest.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. John Rosamando for sharing that insight as the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical expert from Washington, D.C. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, in Moscow today, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi for high-level talks ahead of key diplomatic meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. The talks between Lavrov and Wang comes as tensions remain high over the ongoing war in Ukraine. Wang, who thanked Lavrov for making the time on what he called a busy and significant day for Russia, had also met with Russia's Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu earlier. Witkoff and Kushner arrived in Moscow after holding talks over the weekend with Ukrainian officials and European allies. They're preparing a revised peace framework aimed at ending the war. Putin's meeting with the U.S. envoys is expected to focus on this proposal, marking a critical moment in the ongoing diplomatic efforts. Let's listen into what the leaders has shared.
对总统、对外长本人都是一个非常繁忙而重要的日子，但你还能够抽出时间来，同我进行会谈，它体现了我们之间这种高度的互信，和那么紧密的联系，也再次展现了中俄全面战略伙伴关系高水平。确实，越是这样的一些重要的关头，越需要我们加强战略沟通，那么深化我们的战略合作。
Ну, а наша с вами задача, конечно же, прежде всего обеспечивать тесную координацию по вопросам международной политики, включая задачи стратегической стабильности, надежного обеспечения безопасности Российской Федерации и Китайской Народной Республики и наших совместных действий в международных структурах.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. John Rosamando. He's the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical expert, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, John, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how might the Lavrov-Wang talks shape China's diplomatic stance and influence in the upcoming Russia-U.S. peace negotiations on Ukraine? Do you think it has any say in this?
Well, the Chinese are just standing on the sidelines, and I'm sure that the Chinese are standing with the Russians. You know, they don't want the Russians to give up any territory. I think that the other thing that the Chinese have in mind is their own ambitions toward Taiwan and East Asia, where they've been increasing their exercises along the coast. So I think that the Chinese are not going to change their stance or try to lean on for peace and just let the Russians and the Ukrainians figure it out.
Right, and how do you think how important is China for Russia? Because as we know, today was a big day for Russia, but regardless of that Lavrov decided to meet with Wang Yi.
Well, let's put it this way. If it wasn't for China, Russia would have been out of this war a long time ago. The Chinese have ensured the flow of money and arms to the Russians and have made it possible for the Russians to skirt sanctions. So I think that, without China, there wouldn't be this war.
Right, and now what political leverage could Russia gain by coordinating closely with China ahead?
Well, I think that what Russia gets by pulling in with China is reassurance of its standing vis-a-vis NATO and the West, because China is the only power on the planet that is able to go toe-to-toe with the West.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. John Rosamando for joining us today and sharing that insight all the way from Washington, D.C. Now, moving on to our next news, Serbia's President Aleksandar Vučić has announced that payments and transactions for the U.S.-sanctioned Russian-owned oil company NIS will continue until the end of the week, despite the risk of secondary sanctions. The temporary measure aims to allow NIS to pay workers and manage other transactions following U.S. sanctions imposed in October on Russia's energy sector. Vučić has warned that Serbia's only NIS-owned refinery, with a capacity of 4.8 million tons, could be forced to shut down unless the company receives a reprieve. Shutdown would have major economic impacts as NIS employs around 14,000 people and contributes roughly 5% of Serbia's GDP and 10% of its budget revenue. Serbia has short-term reserves and imports fuel from Hungary, but limited storage and distribution capacity that could strain logistics. Vučić has also set a 50-day deadline for Gazprom and Neft to sell their stake or in NIS, or the government will intervene to take over operations. Let's in fact listen into what Aleksandar Vučić has shared.
Nedvosmisleno je da Rusi ne žele da prodaju i da im se ne prodaje. Nema nikakve sumnje. Nije novac uopšte u pitanju je politika. I to je logično, njihovo pravo. Oni su vlasnici. Druga je stvar što mi imamo mnogo muka sa tim. Kao što i Amerikance baš mnogo drugo ne interesuje, osim njihovih geopolitičkih interesa. Opet nije neki veliki novac u pitanju. Za sada strada samo Srbija, da li će i kako će dalje da bude, vidjet ćemo.
Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar. He's a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, how desperate is Serbia now? How might this Serbia's decision to temporarily continue transactions with the sanctioned NIS affect its political relationship with the United States and EU?
For Serbia, I think it's a very difficult decision to take because Serbia is a landlocked country and it's much dependence on the energy requirements of Serbia. As you mentioned, it's 5% of the GDP and it's winter months now. So it's extremely important that this pinch, in case this NIS is stopping its production and bringing a halt to the energy requirements for Serbia, it's going to impinge very heavily in times of winter. So I think two options are only there left for Serbia now. Of course, 1 week of reprieve have been given and sanctions have been imposed since October 2025. So it is humanitarian as well as economics, both aspects, and payments also to the workers also to meet the obligations. So I think there may be a case for Serbia to get into their act together in trying for a change of management, because that is what I perceive they is the only solution, because shutting down will be a major problem. So in case they are able to, they are actually able to convince for disinvestment into the company, and if the Gazprom is able to make some kind of arrangement, because see, this capacity is very large, 4.8 million tons every year of this refineries taking out. So it is, economically, I don't think Serbia can stop it. So it will be, they'll have to manage. Possibly, I feel that efforts should be taken for a change of management of the company so that they can avoid these sanctions, because I don't think United States is going to let loose so soon. So I think this next 7 to 10 days is going to be a very crucial period to watch as far as Serbia is concerned.
And how could this Serbia's 50-day ultimatum to Gazprom and Gazprom Neft, how do you think this could reshape its broader energy strategy and geopolitical alignment? Do you think these choices that Serbia is making today is going to have long-term effects as well?
Definitely, I think it's a very good question, because the long-term perspective has to be seen, because right now you may be able to tide over a problem, tide over a situation, and it may give you a short-term solution. But in the long term, I think you'll have to generate that kind of economic stability in your own country to start your own processes. Like in India also, we are feeling the need for going into self-reliance and Atmanirbhar, Make in India. All these campaigns we are trying to launch, because sanctions are affecting us also. Tariffs, as you've seen, United States imposed 25%, then again 25% penalty. So I think all nations in the long term must develop their own capabilities in order to circumvent the current type of a situation which Serbia is facing.
Right. Thank you very much, retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus to the UK. UK government is proposing major reforms to the criminal justice system, limiting the right to a jury trial in England and Wales. Under the plan, only cases involving rape, murder, manslaughter, or other matters of public interest will go to a jury. Lesser offences and complex financial crimes would instead be handled by new swift courts led by a judge, aiming to reduce the record backlog of more than 78,000 Crown Court cases. But this is leading to controversies. Let's listen into what the leaders have shared on this.
With this review, Sir Brian has produced a blueprint for once-in-a-generation court reform. It's desperately needed, Mr. Speaker, because this government inherited an emergency in our courts. A record of rising backlog, currently at 78,000 cases. Victims facing agonising delays, with some trials not listed for years. All the while, defendants bide their time. Sir Brian also proposes restricting defendants' right to elect for jury trials, a practice not found widely in other common law jurisdictions. And let's be honest, it's a peculiar way to run a public service. Our world-leading judges should hear the most serious cases, and I agree that they and the magistrate should decide where a case is heard. This will prevent defendants from gaming the system, choosing whichever court they think gives the best chance of success and drawing out the process, hoping victims give up.
Why on earth does this Justice Secretary think he has a mandate to rip up centuries of jury trials without even a mention of it in his party's manifesto? In his twisted logic, he says he's scrapping juries to save them. But be in no doubt, if the Justice Secretary gets away with this, is the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing for good.
The Ministry of Justice claims the changes could cut trial times by roughly 20%. Critics, including legal experts and solicitors, argue that removing juries risks undermining fairness, community trust, and equality in the justice system. They warn that concentrating verdicts in the hands of a single judge may erode confidence, particularly in sensitive or complex cases. Historically, jury trials have been a cornerstone of English justice dating back to the Magna Carta and strengthened over centuries through landmark cases and the Bill of Rights. Similar reforms in countries like India, Singapore, and Malaysia have eliminated jury trials, citing efficiency and complexity concerns, though critics note this reduced public participation in justice. Now for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar. He's a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Doctor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, how might limiting this right to a jury trial, how do you think this will affect public trust in UK's criminal justice system? And how do you think this will reshape public confidence as well?
So a very interesting question,
Yes.
because it's a catch-22 situation.
Yes.
You have to reduce the waiting period of the cases. If there are 78,000 pending cases, there's an old saying that justice delayed is justice denied. So in case you are going to prolong the cases to that extent, because a jury trial takes time, it is labor intensive, it is time intensive, and you have to see the availability of all the jury members at the same time. They have to be available. Number of adjournments are there, so cases take a very long time to fructify. So I think this is a very balanced approach. I personally feel that this decision is a very far-reaching decision in order to address the problem. And why I say that is that you are taking off lesser serious cases or cases where a punishment is accepted up to 2 to 3 years, and you are ensuring that a single judge is clearing these judgments. So it is bound to reduce that backlog. Jury trials are still there because that's a time-tested system for the British, because you don't rely only on one person or two persons' judgment. It is the entire jury which decides. So I think it's a very, very fair system of trial. Why in India you can't impose this? Because India has a very large population, so you can't have a jury trial in India. But definitely in the UK, I think for the more serious cases, I think it also leads to resource efficiency, and the complex and the serious cases are tried by the jury. So I think this is a victim-centered reform. And why I actually say that is because the investment in victim and witnesses support the services which recognize that delays. And therefore, I think for the people at large, as I mentioned to you, that when you delay a justice, it is a denial of the justice. So I think that principle is being applied here in fair measure, and at the same time you are not removing the jury system of trial, because you are keeping it for the more serious cases. So I think a public trust, as the opposition is bound to rake up this issue that public trust is going to be affected and justice is going to be affected. But I think in the long run, let it go on a trial. I think whenever a system is changing, you must allow it to be tried for at least 1 to 2 years to see the efficacy of the system. So I would suggest to the UK government that put this system on a trial or a test bed and see how it works out. In case it works out for you, then you formalize it. But in case it doesn't work out for you, then you go back to the old system. So that kind of an approach, I think, would be a more practical one.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Major General Rajan Kochhar for joining us today as a Senior Strategic and International Affairs expert from New Delhi. Thank you very much. Now, moving the focus to Middle East, Israeli police has said that they have received the presumed remains of one of the last 2 deceased hostages from Gaza and are taking them for forensic identification. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office has confirmed the remains were handed over through the Red Cross with formal notification to follow after identification. It is unclear whether the remains belong to Israeli-ran Gwili or Thai national Sudtiasak Rintalak, who were the last 2 hostages still held by Hamas after the October 7, 2023 attack. Hamas has not officially confirmed the delivery, but search operations continue in northern Gaza with the Red Cross involved. Now we stay in the region. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has clashed publicly with Ireland's Ambassador Sonia McGuinness at a foreign ministry event in Jerusalem. The heated exchange erupted over a Dublin City Council proposal, now shelved, to rename a park honoring Israel's 6th president, Chaim Herzog, who was born in Ireland. McGuinness argued that the fight against anti-Semitism must not be used for political gain and pressed Saar on the importance of the facts. Saar fired back, accusing Dublin of ignoring an anti-Semitic proposal until Israel applied pressure. He has claimed Ireland has no system capable of protecting against rising anti-Semitism. Let's listen in.
Minister, I'm glad to hear you mention the scourge of anti-Semitism and what must be done about it. But I would have thought that it must be carefully managed and not used for political gain. Anti-Semitism is a scourge and must be countered. And therefore, don't you think facts are important?
So tell me, please, why it was published on Friday, this anti-Semitic proposed decision of the City Council of Dublin, and nothing happened until Saturday, when I attacked that and the President of the State of Israel attacked it, and only then your Foreign Minister and your Prime Minister and everyone woke up. Why? Why? Because you're only responding. There is nothing in your system right now that can defend you from that virus of anti-Semitism, except of external pressure and exposing the anti-Semitic nature of this government of Ireland and other institutions. And we will continue to do that, and we will continue to do that, and we will continue to expose you until you will understand that you cannot deceive the world.
This came after Dublin City Council moved to remove the name of Chaim Herzog from a local park. Herzog was Ireland-born and later became Israel's 6th president, making the park, a symbolic of shared history between the two nations. The proposal sparked immediate criticism. Irish and Israeli leaders warned the move would be perceived as anti-Semitic, arguing it effectively raised an important chapter of Ireland's own past. Israeli officials said the plan was politically driven, while Ireland's Prime Minister called it divisive, wrong, and a denial of our history. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
What we can do